think we can go ahead and get started. Um, for anyone who is new to this channel or new to me, I'm the farmer behind the farm at Beagle Hill. My name is Cailyn. I live in upstate New York. And prior to farming, I was a sweater designer for several mass market retailers, and I was based in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm a recent transplant to upstate New York. Um, and I'm just super duper passionate about sweaters, about sheep, about sustainable farming practices, and about making sure that American uh, consumers have access to affordable uh, local yarn and local wool in their shopping experience. So I'm just going to jump into some of the questions that I get asked the most frequently when I tell people that I'm a new farmer or that I am a sheep farmer in general. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will be happy to answer them. Um, I'm happy to answer anything regarding how I got to where I am today, how farming impacts my local community, how it affects my life, anything about the farming things that interest you, anything about sheep, anything about sweaters, yarn production, manufacturing, anything like that. The design process, happy to talk about any and all of that with y'all today. So I've got my list. First question I usually get asked is, did I always know that this is what I wanted to do? The answer is no. I did not always know that I wanted to be a farmer. I will say probably the closest thing that I ever got to wanting to be a farmer was wanting to be a large animal vet. And I wanted to be a vet for a very long time until probably my sophomore year in high school when I realized that apparel design was an actual job. And I had been knitting since I was about 10. And so, I mean, to do the math, it's like 21 years that I've been knitting. So, been knitting for a very long time now. And realized that, like, oh, I could go to school for design and for apparel. And I didn't know that that was something I could do until that time. So, that's where I did, or that's what I did. And that's where I went. I went to Pratt. And it wasn't until COVID when I realized that, well, during COVID, my work went remote. I had been working full time in the office. And during COVID, started working remote and could work anywhere I wanted, which was incredible. And so started realizing that I could potentially open, get land, have a farm, some sheep just for fun, just like a hobby. And kind of, do a little bit of hand spinning and knitting with my own wool. And it wasn't until I went to the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, it might have been 2019, no, 2021 maybe. It might have been 2021. Um, when I went specifically to hear Clara Park speak. And she, if you haven't read her book Vanishing Fleece, I mean, it's phenomenal. It tracks her story, from taking like a raw bale of wool. I think it was like 600 something pounds of raw fleece and having it developed into yarn. And reading her story really kind of like lit a fire in me. It caused me to probably feel more passionate about the sustainable yarn movement. It was already something that I was very focused on and very interested in, but going to hear her speak and talk about her journey and having her ask the audience, like, what are things that we as the audience can do to help make local yarn more accessible to folks in the communities, and how can we do our best to speak to the mass retailers and see if they can do anything to start manufacturing in the US again. And out of that whole group, it was, maybe 100 people max. I had this realization of being like, wow, I'm probably the only person in this room at this time that is working in the fashion industry as a sweater designer. I was working for Macy's at the time, which, as you know, is a very large retailer. And so that really really got me going. So I went back to Macy's and like, listen, we have to do this. I put together a presentation, presented it several times to leadership, got a lot of really great feedback. People loved it, um, but it didn't go anywhere, which was super disappointing. They just weren't as passionate about the project as I was, and they didn't see the connection between purchasing wool um, from like New York or just in general American farmers, and working within the existing manufacturing in the US to make sweaters. It's doable, it's entirely possible. It just takes some like putting things together in a way that they haven't done. They like to work with their vendors that they have relationships overseas, and it's very cheap. And there's very little legwork that they need to do to make things happen. Um, so I decided to do this. I moved upstate, bought a farm, got sheep, and shortly after we closed on the house, we got a new CEO at Macy's, and he decided everybody needed to come back to the office 5 days a week, which was not going to work for me because I had just bought a farm in upstate New York, and I was not going to be able to make the commute to the 34th Street location. So I quit my job and I got a job at Cornell, which is where I now work. So another question I get asked is, do I work full time on the farm? Which is no. Unfortunately, that is a goal for the future. But right now, I work, a regular like 9 to 5 at Cornell. And then when I come home, I'm a farmer. And so I check in on the sheep when I get home. I take care of everyone. Um, and on the weekends, I get to be a full time farmer, which I love. I get to spend most of my time outside with the sheep, with Oliver, my border collie, who you've seen a couple times. He loves it. We call it playing the sheep, it's his favorite thing to do. Um, so, next, I have how did I learn everything that I do on the farm? And did I grow up in a farming family? No, I did not grow up in a farming family. I grew up in suburbia. You could drive like 20 minutes away and end up in like a rural-esque area of Texas. But it was not a farming community whatsoever. So I have no experience prior to living on our farm now. I was part of FFA. So I did have like a little show rabbit, and I did do horse judging, and I did grow up riding horses, but that was about it. Um, I learned everything that I do now through reading books, through taking classes like the Cornell Small Farms program. One of my earlier videos, I shared a lot of educational resources, but my favorite ones are the Cornell Small Farms program. There are some fabulous books. Stories Guide to Sheep is incredible. That one I think is the first book you should buy on sheep. Um, a lot of the other land grant universities, Cornell is one of them, but like Penn State and Maryland offer monthly webinars on all sorts of things from parasite issues to hoof care to lambing to balancing nutrition to pasture management. And they're offered on like a rotating schedule, typically, Tuesdays at 7 or Wednesdays at 8. You just go to their website and then sign up for the webinar, and they send you links. So I still get the emails to all the webinars. And if it's one that I'm interested in, like last week, I took a webinar that was like planning out your yearly maintenance with sheep. And it was focused around the lambing process, which is fantastic because I'm like 2.5 months away from lambs. So that was a really great time for me to, or that was a really great webinar for me to join because it was really well timed for what I'm currently working on. And then when we moved here, I reached out to the local Border Leicester breeder who I had been told about a couple months ago when we were looking at houses. I emailed her. I was like, hey, I am new to the area. I really want to raise Border Leicesters. I love them. I think they're incredible sheep. Do you think I could meet you and your sheep sometime? And she emailed me back. And she was like, did you buy? And then describes the house that we bought. I guess very few houses. I mean, when we bought the house in our area, there were only 3 other farm-esque kind of property. So and if only one of them sold, she probably knew exactly which one it was. And she described my house. And I emailed her back. I was like, "Yeah, actually, that's the house I bought." She's like, "Well, I live down the street from you, so when you're, next time you're here, just stop by." And that's what I did. And then for the next several months, up until we got sheep, which was about a year later. So basically, until this past April, I was at her house either every week or every other week. It was several times a month at least, um, just helping her. I don't know how much help I was. I think a lot of the time she was. I think a lot of time I was probably making her spend more time doing chores with the sheep, but for the majority of the time, she was showing me how to do things, teaching me how to balance the nutrition, teaching me how to hand shear the sheep, showing me how to trim their hooves, how to give them medication, how to check them, how to check body condition score, how to check the FAMACHA score. Oh, if you're interested in sheep, FAMACHA training is something you should definitely do. It's really important for determining if you need to deworm your sheep. But I'm getting derailed. um, so anyway, that's where I learned a lot of my skills was with hands-on experience with my neighbor and their sheep, and that was invaluable for me because to that time or up to that point, the only experience I had working with sheep um, was limited to going to things like Rhinebeck or the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival and getting to handle sheep in a very controlled environment. Um, and here I was in a farm, as controlled of an environment as a farm can be, which is not a super controlled environment. Um, Learning how to catch sheep and learning how to do all these things like in the moment. And I think what was the biggest thing that I learned in that was when I go out to the sheep, don't just do the thing I needed to do, but like take a moment to look at them and assess. Does someone need their feet trimmed? Does someone's nose look a little runny? Or are their eyes a little cloudy? Or, someone walking a little funny? Or is there a little bit of wool break on someone? Like, just assess everybody with your eyes, with your hands, put hands on them, body score them. Don't just go out there and like dump some grain in the food trough. Like actually look at the sheep and determine, are you okay? Like what is your health and can I do anything to improve it? Um, so yeah, that was really important. um, Another question I get, which I think is super fun, is what happens next with the wool now that it's been shorn, and what are my plans with it? Um, yeah, so right now I'm skirting the fleece. I have been skirting the fleece. I've only skirted 3 fleeces. I am way behind the schedule I had mentally prepared for myself. So who knows when things are going to get sent out to the mills. But when I'm done skirting the fleeces, mind you, I have 11 and I'm only on the third one. Um, they're all beautiful. I'm really happy with it. But once they are skirted, which is just removing the vegetable matter, so I'm removing any straw or dags, which is just like poopy fleece that's way too poopy to be washed. So just throwing that away. I've got like a bag. I'm just gonna compost. So getting rid of all that. I'm also going an extra step, and I think this is what's taking me so long, is I'm separating my fleece into 2 sections. The really nice, soft, very like uniformly crimped fleece that will all be spun into yarn for sweaters. And then I have a second fleece or a second pile of fleece that I'm putting together that is still very soft, but the crimp may not be as uniform, or the crimp may be very light. It may be more of a wave as opposed to like a curl. And that is all going to be sent out to be turned into yarn for outerwear. So for like coats and blazers and stuff like that. Something where it's okay if it's a little rougher, because you want that in an outerwear. You want something to be really dense and sturdy. So that wool is perfect for that. So everything will be sent out to a mill. They will wash it, they will card it, they will spin it, they will put it into skeins or on cones for me, and they'll send it back. And that will take anywhere between 6 to 12 months. And because this is my first time sending fleece out, I'm going to send to maybe like four or so different mills, um, and just see what comes back to me, see which ones I like the best. That way I know for my next set of fleece, I can say, "Hey, I liked this mill the best. What they sent back to me was exactly what I was looking for, and they had, whatever, the best price or the best turnaround or whatever it is." But ultimately, I'm looking for the best yarn that comes back. And maybe some mills do different types of yarn better. Maybe mill A is really good with like a woolen spun kind of Aran yarn, or an Aran weight. And then maybe, mill B is really good if I want like a sock weight yarn. Um, I won't know until I try them. So each time I do something new, I'll need to spread out um, all the fleece and see what I get back. And then once I have all the yarn, as I said earlier, and as you probably know, I do have a lot of experience working in the sweater business. And I used to have a sweater label a long time ago. I haven't done anything with it in a long time. And I'd really like to resurrect it and bring it back. And so my current plan or hope is to reopen the brand in 2027, for fall 2027, but that is really dependent on when I can get my fleece back in yarn form. So hopefully I can finish these fleeces and get them out. But as you probably know, as someone who works at Cornell and occasionally has a second job and then also farms, I am very busy. And so I don't have a lot of time to focus um, on skirting the fleece. So hopefully that is something I will be able to do. I can feel my days becoming lighter, um, the more we go into winter because there's less to do outside. So I've got my fingers crossed that I will be able to focus a little more on skirting fleeces in the near future. Um, okay, next question. Will I ever have lambs? I hope so. we Our first date of potential lambing is March 15th. Lester decided to. I was aiming for like April and May lambs, but back in October, Lester decided to potentially have lambs earlier, and he broke out of his paddock and joined the ewes. And I discovered this when I came home from out of town and went out to say, hi to the sheep. And was like, "Oh, I have an extra sheep out here." that um, that's a little strange. And then saw that Lester was not in his paddock. It looks like he broke the bottom gate latch and then squeezed through the gate. He was able to push it open just a little bit. So that has since been fixed. But I just decided to leave him out there because what's the point? He's already out there. So March 15th is our earliest date of lambing. I really hope we have lambs. I am a little afraid we will not have lambs because Lester is just so sweet and gentle and very, very just I don't even know the right word, like easy to handle. He is the easiest of all of my sheep to handle, um, which is surprising because he's a ram. He is so just gentle. Um, don't ever turn your back on a ram, and do not ever let them make you think that they are totally safe to be around. Every time I'm with him, I am very like my eyes are on him, and I have a bell on him so I can hear him for whenever that time is that he decides to be an asshole. But he hasn't done that yet. So I just have a really hard time believing that all 8 of the ewes that are out with him are actually pregnant. I've seen him with all of them, so I know that the act has been done, but I just have a really hard time believing that my sweet, gentle little Lester would impregnate all of those sheep. Crispin and his 2 ewes, I'm 100% sure that they're pregnant. Um, the very first thing he did when we introduced them was mount them. So I think Crispin is we're gonna have little lambs out of coffee and cream. So March 15th is our date. I'm really excited. I still mentally am like, we're not gonna have any lambs. But that is highly unlikely considering both of the rams have been very active. So fingers crossed. Um, let's see. What are my future farm plans? So there are a lot of plans, and it really depends on if you're asking, like, what are my plans for tomorrow, or what are my plans like 10 years down the line. If you're asking short term, I am just trying to get to lambing. I'm trying to convince myself that we're going to have lambs. And when we do, I'm going to have to be really on top of it. Like, which ones are we keeping and which ones are we eating or selling? I know of a couple people who have reached out to me to ask about buying lambs when we have them. So, you know, just trying to get to having lambing. That's our next big, first time on the farm sort of situation. Big plans down the line. I am working on some projects that might eventually allow us to have hundreds or thousands of sheep. Right now on our farm, we can support about 30 ewes and their yearly lambs. So that would fluctuate between 30 to 75 sheep on the farm in a year. And that's perfectly fine for, keeping my sweater business and running that and keeping it nice and small. But I have this kind of lofty goal of being able to offer American wool in the mass market. So being able to, you as a consumer, being able to buy a sweater from J. Crew or LL Bean or Land's End or Macy's. Maybe, I don't know, just any big mass market retailer. I have this lofty goal of making American wool accessible and affordable to the average American consumer. And so to be able to do that, we need to operate at a large scale and we need to be vertical. So I'm working on some projects that might make it possible for me to have a couple thousand sheep, which, would end up being tens of thousands of pounds of fleece a year. And that would be what we need to make American wool garments affordable and accessible to everyone. When that happens, when we have that many sheep, we'll need to open a mill. And I've been kind of eyeing some locations around town that I think would be really good mill locations. So when that time comes, hopefully one of those locations or even a better one is available. We don't have the space on our farm. We're only 19 acres. We don't have the space to build a mill to the size that I need to be able to support that amount of fleece. But that is something I want to do. That is something I think is really important. And so for any of you viewers, if that is something you are interested in doing or if something that you are currently doing, I would love to hear more from you about what you're doing to make it happen and what you hope to see in the future. See, next, what projects am I working on now and what is coming up next? So right now I'm kind of planning or preparing for lambing. The big thing that I need to do is put together my lambing kit. So I've made a list of the bare bones necessities, like what I absolutely must have, no emissions, kind of kit for lambing. So I need to put that together and I can read you that list. That's on my phone in case you are curious. Let's see. So I have powdered or frozen colostrum. So that's the very first milk. It's not really milk, but it's really thick, milky stuff, I guess, that comes from the ewe. It's the first nutrition that the sheep gets for the first day or two of its life. And it's really important. It comes packed with vitamins and antibodies and all the stuff it needs to have a really good start. So in case you rejects a lamb or the lamb has issues feeding, I need to be able to feed it the colostrum within its first day or two. And then syringes and needles for all of the vaccines that the ewes and the sheep get, OB gloves in case I need to pull a lamb, medical lube in case I have to pull a lamb, feeding tube uh, in case of, like I said, a ewe rejects a lamb or a lamb is not feeding and it needs to be intubated. Um, a bottle and a nipple, blue coat or iodine for when I clip the cord, snot bulb thing to help clear their nose, little lamb scale to make sure that the lambs are gaining weight. I need one of those rubber bandy gun things for tail docking, an ear tagging gun. I have the ear tags. You can get 100 free ones from USDA when you get your Scrapies number. So I've got my Scrapies ear tags. I need to get ID tags for the farm. So with the sheep numbers that I will assign them or their names. A lamb puller in case I need to pull a lamb. Dry towels, a thermometer. I have scissors, so I just need to put those in my crate. Creep feed for the lambs, and that's it. So I need to put that together in like a tote or something. I'm currently thinking like a plastic tote sort of thing, maybe like one of those coolers, like the flip top coolers, because then if it gets messy or dirty, it's easy to hose off and clean down. And then once I pull those things together and kind of working in line with that, I really need to put up cameras in the barn so that I can check on the sheep around lambing time without having to go out to the barn. And that would be really nice. Like before I go to bed, I feed everyone around 8. And then before I go to bed around 10 or 11, do another check on the camera, make sure everybody's okay, make sure nobody needs any lambing assistance. But before I'm able to put cameras in the barn, I need to put Wi-Fi in the barn. So I think I'm going to order, I'm really happy with the mesh network that we have set up in our home. And so I recently found that they have outdoor versions of the routers that will extend our current Wi-Fi. And if I get 2 of them, I should be able to extend all the way to the barn and then maybe a bit further into the fields and the pastures. So that is something that I'm hoping to set up within the next week or 2. If I order them today, I'll get them in like a week or so. And then maybe it'll take me another week to set them up. But yeah, once I have those up, then I'll get cameras. I could start researching cameras now, but one step at a time. And then I think my favorite question I get asked is, how do I know which sheep is who? The easy answer is that they all have ear tags. Like I said, they have Scrapies tags and then they have farm tags. And so by looking at the farm tag with their like farm identification from the farms that they came from, I know who they are. So that's the easy one. If you can see the ear tag, then that's all you need to know. But um, they are all individuals and they all have their own personalities. And so generally you can tell who is who just based on the way they're acting. Um, I mean, some of its appearance, like Wendy is the big fat gray sheep. And Cappuccino is the only Romney in her group of 9 sheep. She's the only Romney. And Lester is the tiny little black ram. So some of it's appearance based, but for the 5 white ewes that all pretty much look the same, you can tell based on their personality and their attitude. So I know Butterscotch is the one who's always getting into trouble. She's the one jumping on everyone and running around and being silly. She's the youngest, except for Lester, so that shouldn't surprise anybody. But she is very funny. And so I know that's her. When I see her jumping on someone or just being silly, you know exactly that it's Butterscotch. Or if I see, Posey will boss the other ewes around. Wendy's in charge. She's the sheep in charge. But when it comes to the white ewes, if there's one of them bossing everyone around, it's Posey. And if she has a partner, that's Louise. um, and then Tilly and Luna are buddies. Tilly is a little more sassy. Luna is very loving. Luna is the sheep that comes up to me before I close up at night and kind of like gently kind of butts me. Is like, you can't leave without my goodnight kisses. So Luna gets goodnight kisses. She's very loving and she wants all the attention, which is super sweet. So I think, if you can't see the ear tags, which, like I said, is the easiest, you can just glance at that and know exactly who you're looking at. But if they're out in the pasture and you see someone doing something silly, just kind of evaluate their behavior based on everybody else's. And that'll generally tell you who is who. Those are all the questions I have. Um, I'm going to let you go because I've got to get back to doing farming things. But before I go, I think Oliver might want to say hello. He is sitting next to me. Oliver, you want to say hi? Yeah. Yeah, Oliver, everybody watching likes your sheep. Do you like your sheep, Oliver? You do, yeah. You love your sheep. Yeah. One day you're going to be a really good herding dog. Yeah. You're going to be the leader of a pack of herding dogs. You're going to herd all of our sheep. If we have thousands, we'll probably need a couple herding dogs, right? A couple more border collies. We call it playing with sheep, and he gets so excited. His ears immediately go straight up. His tail is wagging a lot right now. I think I've said the word sheep a few too many times. He's going to expect that we go outside right now and go visit them. But anyway, I'm going to leave it here. It's been nice chatting with y'all. As always, if you have any questions about the farm and any things that we do or that I do at the farm, please comment them below and I will answer them when I get a chance. Bye.